We're back with our special guest, photographer Michael Strider. The new book, Strider, The Stories I Can Tell, available now on Amazon. Michael, so you started taking shots of some of your favorite bands with the little camera down the pants. When did you start getting legit? When did you start getting photo passes? I know you talked about working with Ted Nugent at some point. You've mentioned Kiss and stuff. How did that elevate to the fact that now you're a pro photographer? You got passes, you're in the pit and all that.
It started with as soon as I came home from Ted Nugent, I had kind of experienced something that I had never experienced before. Because I was this little punk kid from a small town in North Carolina, and
Mhm.
never, I didn't have a whole lot of friends, and I absolutely had no girlfriends at a young age. So I was very shy. And when I went to Ted's show, and I had the laminate around my neck, and was standing there at the stage, I noticed all the attention that I was getting, especially from women, but from pretty much everybody around me. So it got very, very, very intoxicating very quickly. And so after that show, I came home. AC/DC was playing soon, and also Hootie and the Blowfish. Oh Lord, were both playing in the town that I lived in, or close to the town that I lived in. So I thought I was the coolest thing in the world at that point after I had done that show. So I just came home and I called their publicist and I said, "My name is Michael Strider. I'd like to get a photo pass for the show." And I'll never forget the agent or the PR person said, "Okay, what's the name of of the magazine you're with?" And I said, "I'm not with a magazine. I'm just a photographer. I'd like to get a photo pass." And they're like, it doesn't work that way. You have to be with a publication." I said, "Okay, cool. I'll call you back." And so a friend of mine, Tony Lombardi, was a graphic designer at the time. And I called him and I said, "Look, we need to do something here. I got to get into these. I've had a taste of this incredible high. So uh, we got to make this happen." So he said, "Well, let's just start our own magazine." So we created um, the first magazine that we created. The two of us were talking over the world, but what are we going to call it? And I said, "Well, it's gonna consist of all different kinds of music, and it's going to be free." I said, "Why don't we call it Free for All?" Ted Nugent, obviously.
Mhm.
Let's call it Free for All. And so we printed up a couple of issues, and uh, I wrote. Now, this was very devious, obviously, but I mean, you had to do what you had to do to get into this stuff. So I took a magic marker and I wrote across the front of one of them, press proof, do not copy. And so I would send this to the publicist, and that justified us being with the publication. And we got into, and that's kind of where it started and we changed the name and started doing another magazine called Mega Pop. Um, Steve Brown, the guitar player from the group Trickster and Def Leppard, actually came up with that name. And so we started using that one. And I mean, it kind of snowballed and it went on for several years. And then throughout that time, I would work with other magazines or, other groups or venues or whoever it would be. And, I got to shoot tons of people. And then I worked with Kiss, which was phenomenal to say the least. It was one of the most amazing things I ever did.
How did the Kiss opportunity come about and what exactly did you do?
Um, Tommy Thayer hired me, and I was a photographer, and oftentimes I would shoot for like a Kiss publication or something like that, or a venue, and Thayer hired me at one specific time to be probably the coolest time and I worked with them for a couple of years on and off, but probably or maybe 4 years. Um, to me, the most memorable one was when Thayer was their road manager, not their guitar player. and it was the original band. And so he was like, Peter Criss wants to hire you to shoot the last two shows of the band because he's leaving. And he said, "Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Well, hell yeah!" Was that a serious question? And so I shot for Peter. And the one thing about it was he said, "Look, this is very important, Michael. You cannot take pictures of anybody else in the band." He said, "When they come and they stand in front of you, you have to put your camera down." And I'm like, "Tommy, how am I going to do that?" With Gene and Paul, they love cameras. You know what I mean? Um, and he said, if Peter sees you taking pictures of any of the other guys, he'll throw a drumstick at you. And when I look back on it, I should have done that and gotten one of these drumsticks. But as a matter of fact, I did sneak a few shots of Gene doing the blood act and all that stuff. But that was pretty cool. But it was really intense because it was Peter's last two shows, and he came back for a little while, but Ace had left. So that was the very, very last two shows that the original band ever played. And they, the tension was pretty thick at that time. They just, they've never. It's not a secret. Those guys have never gotten along. Gene and Paul doesn't even get along. Um, I mean, they're business partners. They know that they need each other.
Yeah,
So
they tolerate each other. They know the
yeah,
quirks each other have. They
yeah,
deal with
yeah,
that.
yeah. They do
But
all that, and it's all for money. Um, but I had a lot of fun with them. I've got a ton of shots of them. I don't know if I told you, but Amazon is censoring the book to a certain extent. And I was like, well,
so they
why?
basically go through every image and they either
Hmm.
give you, is it a rating or is it just a yay or nay? You're either fully
No, it's
exposed or censored.
no, they're not like censoring the picture. What they're doing is they're censoring how people are able to find it. So it's basically, in essence, they are limiting the uh, the ability to for it's not going to just pop up everywhere like it should on Amazon. Like, you may like this, or you may like this similar thing, or whatever. Uh, it's not doing that. So they're just limiting the way that it's shown. Now, obviously, you're still going to be able to find it and everything, but it isn't going to be to the extent that it's supposed to be. But they just tell us that basically there's 380 pictures in the book. I'm sorry, 380 pages, over 400 pictures though. And there's 3 pages with the Kiss girls. So they were the girls that would basically the groupies, and they were on the front row. And the graffiti was flying everywhere, really cool. And they're topless. They've got their shirts pulled up. And so we did a section on that. And there's also a section with one of my good friends was one of the original Glow Girls, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, back in the 80s.
Okay.
And so she and I have been doing photo shoots for 25 years with girls from all over the country, basically. And so we included a section on wrestling, and some of them are pro guys like Mick Foley and Terry Funk and Abdullah the Butcher and Dusty Rhodes and Jimmy Valiant, basically. But a lot of them are some of her beautiful friends, and they're wrestling. So Amazon has basically deemed it as being a part of it as being sexually explicit, which, whatever. So we've decided we're not going to bow down to the cancel culture nonsense. and we're going to leave all the pictures the way they are, just the way that we wanted to do the book, and we're not going to budge on it. So it's going to be the way it was designed to be, you know?
Uncensored.
Yeah. I'm not going to cut stuff out because, a bunch of idiots in another country, it's not even, I mean, Amazon is not even located in the United States. So they have cultural differences, and, they make these decisions with no idea what we think is good or bad in this country. And I mean, you're at their mercy. That's
And you
that's the
chose
bottom
not to
line.
do two versions, a censored and uncensored. It
No,
is what it
right.
is.
Yes, I'm not going to do that because it's so much work. And in the beginning, it's funny you mentioned that, Jay. In the beginning, my designer was going to do that, but it's just so much work to do two different versions, and so we're leaving it the way it is, and that's it. And like I said, we're going to do a couple more over the next few years because I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of photos, you know. But what kind of a person would I be if I allowed, them to dictate what's in my book? I'm not going to do that.
Well, it's
So,
just like a band saying you can't put that record out.
right, right.
You have a word in here that we deem unacceptable.
Yeah. So you remember when D. Snider fought that fight back in the 80s?
PMRC, everybody, the
Yeah,
WASP and Bitch
yeah.
and the mentors. And I mean, Frank
Tipper
Zappa
Gore.
went down and testified,
Oh yeah,
everybody.
yeah,
And all it
yeah,
did was create more interest
yeah.
by the
Tipper
youth
Gore
to
did it.
to go find the records that had that symbol on it because
Yeah,
it was the anti-authority stuff.
yeah. And it was
Completely
crazy. It was
backfired on him.
yeah, Tipper Gore. It was extreme liberal, and they wanted to do that censorship crap. They're doing the same thing now. It's just, you know, D. Snyder's not, he did what he needed to do, and I think he kind of woke everyone up to what these people were doing, you know. So,
Well, I know
we're
a
like,
lot of the
No.
labels were just licking their chops, like, please bring it on.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's almost
and,
like
and the
did you
bands
ever
were fighting to make sure that that sticker was on their record. Like, please,
Yeah.
that's like a badge of
Oh,
honor.
right. We were going to actually, I told
That's the
my
cool stuff.
designer, yeah, I told my designer, I said, look, I want that sticker in the front of my book. But we didn't use it.
Oh
So,
yeah, it ended
um,
up on the front of T-shirts and everything.
oh
Parental
man,
advisory.
yeah, that was great. But you can't stop rock and roll. They tried to
Now,
do it all the way
how
back
did
to
you
Elvis.
how did you find the balance? Because you got a lot of music, you got these athletes, you
Uh-huh.
have being around, you have TV and movie actors. What kind of
Um,
balance did you want to strike, and how did you kind of lay it out as far as the pacing of it goes?
well, I could have we threw around a lot of ideas, and there were more than one designers on board with this. Um, and I've gone through a couple of different ones, and I ended up with a very good friend of mine who I should have went with in the first place. And so I just wanted to. The first thing that I kind of thought about was, look, there's 15 trillion books with rock stars, so I want to do something different. I've been very lucky to do lots of photo shoots in my life with all kinds of different people, subjects, everything. Um, and so I was like, let's do rock stars, let's do the Hollywood people, supermodels, a couple of my ex-girlfriends, and let's do the wrestling stuff because I shot a lot of these guys throughout the years. I was friends with a couple of them, and obviously with Jeannie.
No, were
And
these stage shots with the wrestlers or in action like matches?
some of them were both. I mean, there's action shots and there's also like Mick Foley. We did a photo shoot with like a fence. I had a prop fence with a red light and all kinds. It's really cool. There's another shot of, do you remember Terry Funk? He
Oh,
just
sure.
recently passed away. Yeah. Um,
Badass dude.
God, he was,
He
that
was
dude was amazing.
nasty.
Oh Lord. And the last time I saw him, he was probably 65 or 70. And he had just finished a match that I had shot. And I was like, how much longer are you going to do this? Are you, Funk, do you need to keep doing this? And he's like, Michael, that's is all I know. I said, all right. But there's a picture of him getting thrown like head first into a door, and he's laying on the carpet. And there's a there's a really cool pic. This was crazy. There's a really cool picture of, I don't know if you remember him. His name was Abdullah the Butcher,
Oh yeah, sure.
and that guy, to our generation, Jay, he was terrifying because he would always go in the ring and he would cut people with razor blades and forks. And when a promoter friend of mine told me, he said, "Well, look, we're going to have all these people. We're going to have, girls. We're going to do this. We're going to." It was like, he said, "Abdullah's going to be." I was like, "Oh Lord!" And I said, "I want to do a photo shoot. Him and Greg Valentine and Dusty and Jimmy Valiant and whatever." And I said, "But look, I got to tell you, I'm a little bit nervous about Abdullah." And he's like, "Michael, you got to remember, this is not, it's an act." I was like, "I don't care if it's an act. That guy scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, my whole generation." So he was very nice. And after I did the photo shoot, he went on out to the ring, and he had a match with Mick Foley. And it was a bad one. There's lots of blood like usual. And so I'm back in the not in the dressing room, but in the photo shoot area after the match. And he was talking to me, and he has like a little boy voice, like a really sweet little boy voice, where you think this guy was like I mean, he looks like a demon, like a killer. But his voice is like a little kid. And he says, "Michael, do you want this?" And he had the fork that he used in the match. And I was like, "Well, hell yeah, I want it. Are you kidding me?" So I walked over and he gave it to me, and it was wrapped up. And then he goes, hold on, come back, come back. And I said, "Okay." And he took the, he took the knife, and you know how there are those slices in the top of his head? I mean, those are real. And it looks like somebody is cutting with razor blades. I mean,
Yeah, they
obviously they
never
had.
heal. They never
Right.
heal
Well,
because
yeah, specifically those cuts on top of his head look like somebody had cut him with like a saw or a butcher. I mean, it was incredible, but he was bleeding and everything. And he goes, "Oh, hold on." And he took it and he said, "Let me see it." And I gave it back to him, and he took the damn knife and rubbed it on the top of his head and put it in a plastic bag and gave it back to me. And I'm like, "Oh, holy shit. Holy shit. I can't believe he just did that." So I'll never forget that little event. Uh,
yeah, you look
but
at
I've been very,
you look at the forehead of those wrestlers,
oh,
and
dude. Yeah.
it's been opened up, but they got
Yeah.
back in the ring before it
Yeah.
ever completely healed, or it's been reopened. So
Oh, yeah.
it's like a wound that will never heal.
Yeah. They look terrible. And so I've been very, very lucky to be able to do lots of very, very cool and fun and hot, sexy, and all kinds of shoots, from Playboy Playmates, supermodels, like I said, female wrestlers, legendary wrestlers. I mean, there's so much stuff in this book, and I wanted to make it to where it's not just rock stars or country stars. Um, I mean, there's all kinds of music from Tony Bennett and Britney Spears to Marilyn Manson and Springsteen or whoever. So I mean, there's so much variety in it that there's something for everybody, and that was kind of my plan. That's what I wanted to do, To me, it's just too boring to do just the plain rock stars over and over and over, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you
one
want
of my favorite,
to create something unique. You want to catch them in a, a
yes.
spot that kind of shows their personality.
Yeah. So and the name of the book is The Stories I Can Tell. The reality of it is, it's there are some heavy hitter stories. I intentionally did not want to just fill this book with, a lot of stuff from, stories from me, whereas I really don't I think that people as a whole want to see, as many pictures as they can and see, because, the story, that's, what they say, the old cliche, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Um, but, some of the crazy, crazy stories are in there. And there's one section that it's probably my favorite section in the entire book. Um, it's dedicated to a girl. Her name was Amy Harwick. And if you probably saw it on the news. It was all over the world in 2020. She was a Hollywood therapist, and she was murdered by a psychotic ex from 10 years prior. And he had stalked her for many years. And she had taken out restraining orders, and that didn't work. And he waited for her when she came home on the night of Valentine's Day in 2020. And they struggled, and he threw her off the top of the balcony. Now, she beat the damn living shit out of him. In the meantime, I saw pictures, at the trial, they photographed him when they brought him in, and she had just beat the ever living shit out of him. Um, so unfortunately, it wasn't enough, but she didn't go down without a damn fight. So, and she was one of the greatest people that ever lived. I mean, she helped so many people and so many women, not just women, but especially women. And she did so much to help anybody and everybody that she came in contact with. And whether it was musicians, any other celebrities, or everyday people, um, she helped uh, people in the adult industry, film industry, that were having mental issues, stuff like that. And I mean, just the list goes on and on of what this girl did. And so I made it a point. I had when this happened, I had a nonprofit organization that helped with spread awareness to suicide prevention or mental health in general, substance abuse, and then domestic abuse. And that's when all this stuff happened. So I kind of, made a promise that I would never let this girl's memory die. So she's in the book. It's a pretty good size section of her in the book. Um, and some of the proceeds are going to go to some of her favorite charities and some of my favorite charities too. So it's not just about rock stars, you know.
Yeah, it's about,
And
human life, and,
yeah,
a lot of
you,
creative people have, challenges. There's a lot of mental illness, there's
yeah,
a lot of domestic abuse, there's a lot of, in a lot of
all that
these
stuff.
industries, yeah, the pressures of the industry lead people to, narcotics or alcohol abuse.
Hmm.
And, you know, the the history's littered with
Yeah,
people that never got any help and lost everything,
yeah,
just to try and relieve the pain or pressure they feel, in an industry that's so competitive or cutthroat, or, people are very divisive, or, you have to take a lot of negativity. If you put yourself out there, reviews can be glowing or they can be horrid. Somebody
yeah,
call you the best thing that ever happened, and somebody call you the worst thing that ever walked the earth, and you have to be able to deal with all that.
It's hard, you know, and I certainly don't deal with it on a level that a lot of those people do. And I mean, it's crazy. I mean, people don't understand, and especially in Hollywood, man, I'll never forget. This is how people look at stuff. Um, and it's just an illusion. They create whatever they want to in their mind of how, just for instance, like if how my life is. I'll never forget it. When I was working in Los Angeles, and a guy that I worked with came up to me and said, "Man, dude, one of the guys told me that your girlfriend's a supermodel." And I said, "Yeah, she is." And he said, "Oh man, I'm sure, man, you never have a bad day." And I was like, are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah, man, you should never have a bad day, buddy." And I'm like, "Dude, you are kidding me." And I said, if you just for a split second, if you could understand what um, the kind of mental abuse, and I mean, obviously, a lot of those people, the one that I was with at that time, did not have, I don't think she had sexual abuse or sexual assaults or anything like that. But, you know, that kind of stuff is rampant in that industry. And mental health is a huge, huge um, thing in that industry, and also in the the world of music and in Hollywood. So a lot of those people struggle 100 times more than the average person. Now, there's plenty of that. That doesn't dismiss what average people like you and me or whoever, uh, what we go through. But people put these, you put these people up on pedestals, and like Elvis Presley once said, there's a big difference in Elvis Presley the person and Elvis Presley the image, and it's the same thing with all the other people like that. On nobody's on Elvis's level, but you know what I mean. Their lives are saturated in problems and issues and drugs and all that stuff. I experienced with pretty much everything you could, um, while I was actively involved with the rock photography stuff, from drugs and lots and lots of this and lots of that. Some of it great, some of it not good.
Yeah, a lot of people kind of withdraw and live in a bubble, because they don't know who to trust. Growing up, they
Right,
had a better barometer on reading somebody, but then you become so-called famous or popular, and now you have no idea. Are these people want to be my friend because who they
right,
think I am, or you know, it's a lot of them withdraw, and also that high from the stage. I mean, when
right.
you're on stage and people are screaming and singing your lyrics, and it's such a high, and you walk off that stage, an hour later, you're in a silent, bus or a room or something, and you're like, damn, man, how do I get that high back? That euphoria was so high.
So they do drugs or alcohol.
Yeah, they medicate.
Yeah, I mean it's
And pretty soon it's blurred between reality and this fantasy world that they've created for themselves.
well, I had, like I was telling you, I was a shy little kid with just
Hmm.
not a whole lot of friends, and even fewer girlfriends. And so when I started getting all the attention, and I'm certainly not, I wasn't a rock star, obviously, but I got a ton of attention. And at first, it was the greatest thing in the world. And then very quickly, I noticed that all these rock stars that I idolized, then they thought I was, they thought I was cool and they thought I was great and they wanted to be or in my mind, they wanted to be my friend. Obviously, they did not want to be my friend. They wanted to be my friend because I was a photographer, obviously. So like you said, I had problems on a daily basis with wondering um, if these people were were genuine with me, and most of them were not. Some of them were, but I very quickly after I got into it, I felt like since I was from the South, they didn't respect me very much. They thought I was stupid or whatever, and so I created this alter ego. And when I would go around these people, I would go into character. And I mean, it was pretty crazy. And it got to a point where it was just so much that I just did not even know who I was anymore. I had to go to therapy and everything. Um, but Gene Simmons was like, dude, you got to check your ego, man. And I was like, hold it. If that's something Gene Simmons is saying, that's like Ozzy Osbourne going, hey, man, you're a drug addict. So, you know, it was really, really heavy and really life changing. And, I finally got a hold of it, or for the most part, I still have it, but it's more in control at this point, you know. I like to think I can be myself now.
Sure.
As boring as that is.
Well, I mean, how did you decide which photos went in the book and which ones didn't, and which ones
No,
might be in the next?
it was the most painstaking, like difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life. It's just like looking at, picking, having a dozen children and narrowing them down to your two favorites. Um, so it was, I would say, thousands of hours of going through stuff, and this took years. Heavy, really heavy over the last 2.5 to 3 years, and so I've narrowed down everything for this one, and then we've got, still have a ton more to do, a couple. So that was the most difficult thing because obviously I wanted to do a book and just put all of my, great stuff in it. But it was like, we can't do 700 pages or something. So it was very difficult, to say the least, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's just got to be instinctual. This is going in, and
Yeah.
that's not. And
I also took a lot of feedback from different people. And then, I would post stuff on social media and I'd say, okay, which one of these do you like the best? And then I would almost every time I would go with one of the others. So that's the way it went.
interesting. And as far as the layout, the pacing of it, like which ones you put up front, which ones you'd kind of put in the middle, and which ones you'd close with, how do you determine that?
We did it to make it the easiest way, the easiest for Bill, the designer. His name's Bill Lanero. I don't know if I told you that, but
Yes.
guitar player, and he's amazing. But yes, we did it to kind of make it easy for the reader. So it starts out. You could call it. You could kind of call it like a memoir based on my life back to I was adopted at 6 weeks old, and so there's pictures that I tell my story, very briefly. So there's childhood pictures, then it goes into teenage, then it goes into uh, the Rainbow Rockatorium, like I told you earlier. My very good friends that kind of got me into the industry, and then it goes into Ted Nugent, and then all the other rock stars. Um, I think then Hollywood, the years in Hollywood, and then the wrestling stuff, and then um, Amy. Amy is in there, and we did a section called selfie support from all over the world, where people took selfies, and it was pretty awesome. I think you'll like it. I hope so, anyway.
Yeah, the images that we've seen are stellar.
Thank you.
And being around a lot of these people, I think you've captured a lot of their spirits here. You know,
It was some cool stuff.
you quickly realize when you move to LA, especially if you're in the industry, that everything that glitters is not gold, and there's a
Oh, yeah,
there's a show and a business,
yeah,
and you know sometimes the two meet, and sometimes it's showtime, and sometimes it's completely behind the scene. Now I know
yeah.
you played a role, as you mentioned, as kind of a bodyguard or security besides being a photographer. How has that kind of opened your mind to seeing behind the scenes of what these people are like and what and how fanatical some of the fans are?
Um, the basically the one that stands out the most, obviously, was Ted. One of the reasons that I stopped working for him was because of all the death threats from the animal rights people and all these other people. And anytime that you have someone involved that's you know a maniac because people don't believe the way that they do, you're going to have a problem if those people get near whoever it is that you're trying to protect, or whatever. But I was 22. It was 22 to about 25 years old, and I was like, look, I'm not bulletproof. So I got to decide whether I want to do this or not. And it was pretty scary sometimes. Um, and it wasn't the easiest thing in the world to work for Ted either, on top of the dangers of it. Um, and I loved it. I learned a lot from him. But I mean, you can imagine the demands. And I was such a young kid at the time, and I didn't know how to take it, you know. Um, but you got to see the reality of how, people are not the same way that you see them on TV or in videos or on behind the scenes on television or even well, there wasn't social media at that time, but the way that they portray themselves is usually not the same way that they actually are in real life, you know.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of the time, a lot of these people are very, very um, emotionally unstable, and they may be very depressed, or their anxiety level may be through the roof. Um, so there's a lot of stuff that comes into play. Basically, you have to look at it like this: they're no different than anybody else that you would hang out with. They just have, you know, lots of money and fame. It's
Yeah,
like,
they have a different kind of day job than you, maybe.
yeah, and like it's like the SNL skit with Christopher Walken, the cowbell. He's like,
Yeah.
guys, I put my pants on one leg at a time, except when my pants are on, I make gold records. That's what he says, which is one of the greatest skits of all time. But that's basically what it is. It's, you know, these people are the same, but at the same time, they're polar opposite. They're extremely different. Um, a lot of them, they're used to getting whatever they want and however they want it. So dealing with that's not easy. I think I told you that I actually played a bodyguard, which was very fun. I was Motley Crue's bodyguard in the TV miniseries or whatever it's called, Pam and Tommy with Sebastian Stan,
Yeah.
where they did the Motley Crue porn, well, the Tommy Lee porn tape. And
What scenes were you in?
I'm in the scene. They you know how they are, where they cut half the stuff that you do. And but I'm in the scene on episode 8 in the very beginning. Uh, the band is at the old. You remember when we used to have the old Tower Records on Sunset Boulevard?
Oh, sure. They painted
So
the building to look like
yeah,
tower.
so they painted the building and they made it look exactly like it did because it's the same building, or it was,
Yeah.
and they made it look exactly like it was
Yeah,
in the
they had
day.
the record cover billboards on the side and everything.
Yep.
I
And
got some shots and video of that before they painted over it.
you know, they actually had an old 80s tour bus, and this thing would not, they couldn't even crank it. So we're having to push this damn tour bus, wherever they wanted to have it positioned. Everybody's trying to push the damn thing. So that was really great. But I'm standing, if you look at the very beginning, the camera pans right over me, and the band is sitting, and I'm standing right beside of them with my black leather and sunglasses, and I've got my arms crossed and all that kind of stuff. And um, it was really crazy at that time because we had COVID, blah blah blah. So it was very strict. We had to do testing 3 times before you could go on set. And so we're on there, we're doing the scene, and this scene was just like all day long. Sebastian was tired and getting upset because they were just doing so many takes. And so basically what you have to do is when the director, so you have to keep your mask on, and then when the director says, and, you take your mask off really quickly and put it in your pocket. Action. And then you do the scene, and then as soon as they say cut, comes out of your pocket, goes back on your face again. And there are these mask people. I won't use the word that we normally use on your radio show because people freak out over that word. But anyway, uh, they were walking around in their neon jackets, and they're like, "Sir, can you put your mask back on, please?" Because you forget it. Sometimes you forget it because you do this over and over and over and over and over. And I didn't know it, but there was a picture on IMDb for the movie, and I'm standing there with them, and I've got my damn mask on and forgot to take that mask off for one of the shots. So it was pretty funny. But yeah, that was one of the greatest times that I ever had, like on set out there. It was so cool, a lot of fun, and everybody was really great.
Can you tell us about this David Lee Roth episode with the Jack Daniels?
Yes, I've got a picture in the book. Um, I was shooting one of the shows. That show in particular was him and Hagar. And you may know when it's been, I think that was at least 15 years ago, right? Something like that. I can't remember.
Uh-huh, yeah,
Um,
almost 20 years ago.
yeah, and I was shooting, and I'm there in the pit, basically at his feet, and we're kind of joking back and forth for a brief, little bit. And he's got his Jack Daniels. And at the time I was shooting film, and I had an N90S Nikon, and I had an 80 to 200 lens, 2.8, and pretty expensive. So all of a sudden he starts laughing, and I'm like, "Oh, that's funny, blah blah blah." And then he dumps his Jack Daniels on my camera and ruins it completely. And everybody always asks, "Well, did he pay you for it?" Nope, he sure didn't. And that was kind of the way that things happen. I mean, you kind of know that you're a photographer, and you're in a very questionable industry, to say the least. And sometimes things happen to where, you cannot even believe that they're happening because it's so, insane. Um, and I think that was the last time that I worked. No, no, no. I worked with him with Van Halen. I'm sorry, when they got back together. But yeah, it just completely ruined the camera. I had to buy everything else brand new. And
And did you feel he was intending to ruin your camera?
oh yeah, yeah, he did it intentionally.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And it wouldn't have happened like that had he been with Van Halen. Because Edward would never have let that happen. He would have, and had it happened, he would have reimbursed me. He would have bought me new equipment. He would never have let that happen. I've always said that, and you know, it was unfortunate. When you look back on it, it was all rock and roll. Is what they say. Um, but it was painful as hell at the time. I can tell you that.
And what city did
I,
that happen in?
oh Lord. I think it was Raleigh, North Carolina, I believe, but I can't remember. I think it was Raleigh, long time ago. Um, and I've got some more horror stories that we'll talk about next time
And
when
I
we're
know
doing a video.
you're doing a book signing, book launch event in June. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's going to be June 1st. It'll be in North Carolina. It's basically in the area that I grew up in.
Okay.
So we're going to do the event. We're going to have a lot of, several of the people that are in the book are coming to sign, and we're going to do like a little red carpet thing with the step and repeat
Uh-huh.
background for people to come and take pictures and stuff. And so a lot of cool stuff that, people around here would ordinarily not get to do. So I'm trying to make it as special as I can for everybody that comes. I mean, I've been very, very lucky and very, very, very fortunate to be able to do all this cool stuff in my life. So I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for, all the people that come, and they'll get to meet some very cool people. Um, Addie Miller, who was from The Walking Dead, one of the zombies from The Walking Dead. She's done a bunch of other stuff, and um, a good friend, his name's Dick Warlock, who played Michael Myers in Halloween 2. Um, Not to mention 200 other movies and TV shows and stuff. Um, and my friend Jeannie, the Glow Girl, the wrestler. Um, so that's just to name a few. Do you remember Mistress Julia from Fuse TV? She was the host.
Yeah, I do.
Um, okay, she's probably going to be there. She's going through some health stuff that she's getting better, and everything is going great. And she's probably going to come up from Florida. And so we'll have some more people, by the time that it rolls around. I wish you could come out for it, man. I've got one buddy that's driving
Holy
across
shit.
country. He's driving from Los Angeles, man. Yeah.
You can fly in
Um,
5 or 6 hours or take
I
4 or
know
5 days to get there.
yeah, he does no, he doesn't like flying. His name is Ken Lowe, and he doesn't like flying. He likes to drive. So he makes the drive in 2 days. 2 days.
Holy shit.
I know.
Does he have a second driver to switch off? I'm
No,
hoping.
he stays. He'll stop and sleep at a rest stop, and he has he has his he has his piece that he puts on his chest while he sleeps he lays back and sleeps, and it's just awesome.
Wow.
So he's flying. He's driving out. Amy's parents are gonna come down from Pennsylvania, and I have somebody coming from Ireland, Nashville. I mean, people are just coming from all over. You're welcome to come if you can get out
Well,
here.
yeah, I'll let you know. I'll definitely be
I,
there in spirit, no doubt. But
I know.
We are on opposite coast. But yeah, it sounds so
Yeah.
great. Michael, you doing this to benefit some of these charities. You're dedicating to the girl who is special to you in the book. And of course, people are really going to enjoy these images.
Right.
It's taking people behind the scenes. I love what I'm seeing. And I know there's another, is it a horror or nostalgia event that you're doing? Is that, I know a lot of
Yes.
these horror movie signings, and they have a thing out here called the Hollywood Show they do at the Burbank
Yep.
Marriott. That
Yeah,
stuff's
I
very
know all about it.
popular.
Uh-huh.
What is that event?
It's called Chiller Theater. It's going to be in New Jersey,
Okay.
the end of April,
Is that
and
happen once a year or twice a year, or how often do they do it?
it happens twice a year now. It's in April,
Okay.
and then it's in the weekend before Halloween.
Okay.
So it's been around for decades, probably at least 25 years, and I've been going to it, several times throughout the year, throughout the years. So it's kind of a dream come true to be able to set up as a guest, and sign the book and everything. So it's very, very cool. I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to it.
No, it's awesome. Walk around these shows and see some people and things that bring you back to points in your life, growing up, and
Yeah.
it's
Makes you feel
it's
like a kid again.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. I know nostalgia is big and getting bigger. Well, our
Yes,
special
it is.
guest is the one and only photographer extraordinaire, Michael Strider. The book is Strider, The Stories I Can Tell. Search for it on Amazon, and we'll provide links below. But Michael, we've got images of your book and your work all throughout these interviews. We appreciate your support of our network, Rock Forever, here. And of course, Van Halen, we were with you at the unveiling of the Edward Van Halen mural on Sunset Boulevard. And of course, other great events at the childhood home of Alex and Edward.
Yes.
So always a pleasure. We look forward to doing more interviews with you and certainly covering that event out there in North Carolina. Thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, buddy. I really appreciate you inviting me. So I look forward to definitely talking to you again soon. And maybe we can do something from the release party that day or something. We can do video.